Hello, everyone. This is Dallas Mcclain from Biohackers Magazine. I am here with Garnet Dupuis again from Lucid Studio, the man in action behind psychedelics, e-psychedelics, and the NeuroVizr, the change maker. He was recently on one of our last deluxe editions. He was talking all about waking dreams, the psychedelic-like technology that really drives creativity, brain engagement as opposed to brain entrainment, and also neuroplastic change, the formula that really drives optimal brain growth. So Garnet, we're so happy to have you here with us again today, and I know we're going to have an insightful conversation like last time. So welcome.
Well, it's a big thank you from Thailand, and I'm in the lucky guy seat to have the relationship with yourself and your team, including Jean. So I don't know if my radiant smile is evident right now, but I'm happy to be with you. Okay.
Great. Yeah, we're happy to have you, and I know we'll learn a lot. So I want to get into a little bit of what we talked about last time, and to bring this up for people that may be listening to this concept for the first time. You had a history with psychedelics and somewhat studying them and somewhat experiencing them. And you came to this sort of realization that the brain tends to predict what's going to happen based on experiences, right? And then there was a way to tap into this process of how the brain does this, and the patterns, and recognizing the patterns through light and music and all of these types of things. So you thought you could create a piece of technology that could help train the brain, not train the brain, excuse me, engage the brain in this pathway that opens up new creative neuroplasticity and new changes. Is that somewhat correct in what I'm describing there? And can you expand on that?
Yeah, it's correct. And I'm impressed that, that you got all the right words. And
Thank you.
I was listening at that. That sounds pretty good. That sounds pretty good. Expand. Yeah. I think, society's pulse in terms of evolution and trend, and it's affected by a lot of things. And all of us are not only members of our society, we're also the generators of society and also the products of society. The concept of individualism is a fascinating one. And yet, I think as an animal, we humans are certainly social. We're group animals. And when I look at the rhythms as best as I can, I'm older than you, so I've had more calendar time to watch these things happen. And now I'll say again, we won't go into history, but now there is an increased sincere interest in consciousness. We can see in science that if you're a tenured professor, not that long ago, you wouldn't risk your position by wanting to study consciousness academically or scientifically. And now the studies are exploding and have been, say, roughly 10-ish years or maybe a little bit more. So something has happened. And most evidently these days, there's a lot of social awareness with psychedelics, again, and that they're moving into a legitimate area of study, medicalization. I was born in Canada, U.S. citizen, lived around the world, and I'm here in Thailand. And Canada now has, federally legalized recreational cannabis, weed, marijuana. And hey, guess what? I'm in Thailand. We did it here too. So, these are examples of a social movement. And so there's that, so I'm saying this because I'm as I say, I'm both a generator and a product of the society in which I live. And I think the more that we understand, they say, when you travel to foreign countries, the country you learn most about is your own, because you have now some kind of comparison, so that you realize that your parent culture is not the only way that culture expresses itself. So you go someplace else, it's different. So you learn about it. So in a way, right now, to me, this is a time when we get to examine meaning and consciousness in a social environment that is supportive of that. And the way that we take our spiritual life. Now, I don't even know what spiritual means exactly anymore. anymore, except we'll use that term, that, the persons that are not associated with any traditional religion, but take their spirituality at a level of sincerity that would be equal to a devout person in a religion. And there are those of us that are reappreciating traditional religious motifs, aside from all the weird shit that's always connected to things, that there's a kind of honesty about consciousness that I think is ripening in our time. Okay, so, that's, I don't know where that came from, but that's my idea.
I like it. Yeah.
So here we are trying to figure out how to figure it out. And yeah, I had very good psychedelic experiences earlier in my life. I loved it and never had an overtly negative experience. And then, life goes on, and I made a decision to try my best using classic systems, first Hindu and then a Taoist, and then for the majority, half of my life, a Tibetan Dzogchen. Some people, that's not quite popular. It wasn't popular in the past. So it's like, what do we do? Here we are. We got jobs. We have to eat and sleep, and most of us have families, or all of that's changing. How do we do it? And against a backdrop where most of our lives are pretty busy. Urban lifestyle is busy. Right now, even you and I had to sort of dance around a little bit as to how to schedule this talk, because you're in Florida, right? Am I calling that right? That's where
right.
You are. Okay, so I'm here in northern Thailand, and it's like there's this big round earth, and we're on opposite sides of it. And so I got up a little bit earlier than usual, and you're staying up a little bit later. You're a family man, you got kids, and it's like we have to schedule in things, because we don't really have a really open format life. At least most of us don't. So when I look at the traditional or the classic systems of spirituality, of consciousness, and healing for that matter, because they kind of blur together for me, we don't have a lot of time. We don't have a lot of time during the day, and we don't have a lot of time, generally speaking, in our life scheduling. I used to go off, I haven't done for a while, but I would go off and do 1, 2, 3 month long solitary mountain meditation retreats under certain teachers. And it was considered radical that a person would take off that chunk of time from their responsibilities and their job to go and meditate. And by the way, it's not like all, twinkling stars and singing birds. It's kind of like, climbing a mountain naked. It's not easy to do these retreats. You think, that's like, it's not a big fat vacation. As a matter of fact, after the retreat, you think, I think I need a vacation. But so here we are. And okay, blah, 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 blah. That I have a sustained interest in doing good, helping others as I learn to help myself. And the understanding that we are time crunched. We have a lot of evolving technology. I'm a fan of technology, but not all technology. I'll label what I'm attracted to as biophilic technology, philia, love, life-loving, life-supporting, life-enhancing technology. Biophilic, biophobic, there's a lot of technology out there that is garbage, and we have to be careful. But that doesn't mean that we throw the baby out with the bathwater. Right now we're engaged with each other because of technology. So I think, well, okay, we don't have a lot of time. We've got a lot of technology. Now we're able to resource a lot of traditional wisdom, but we're also studying our asses off, pardon me, swearing. We're studying a lot at a scientific level, at an academic level, not just a corporate level, like a pharmaceutical wanting to develop a product that we can sell, but we're also wanting to understand. Part of the issue is that, you ask, most people, do you want to live a long life? And they say yes. And then you say, do you know statistically that in industrialized countries, not like third world, grass hut, but the societies that we live in, that around between 80 and 85, which is a reasonable target for longevity these days, the statistics are about 50-50 to either be with or without dementia. So, hey, do you want to live into your 80s? Well, yeah, because 70, I'm in the middle of my 70s, so 80 doesn't seem like, a Mars shot. It's not that far away. That, do you want to live into your 80s? Well, yes. And would you like to be healthy? Well, duh. So we put all this attention on our somatic health. And, it's a game. Your body changes. It's not going to, believe me, it'll change. But then the issue is, well, what about your coconut? What about, even if you have a vital, relatively healthy body, you can't lift big weights anymore and all that, but, you're still active and quite comfortable. What about your state of consciousness?
Right.
And there is, if anybody's paying any attention at all, in advanced age, there is a serious risk of cognitive decline, even at a pathological level, dementia, Alzheimer's. So just that as a little bit of a sobering fact. It isn't just like, look at you. You're a young guy. You're in the middle of the whole game. The sense of mortality is not evident. And also, you're a healthy guy. You're a good-looking guy. You got a family. You got a job. Things are okay. But still, the wisdom of trying, not in a self-saturated sense, wanting to improve yourself, but really, wanting to be a good person and wanting to refine consciousness is a luxury that we have. But unfortunately, it's within very stiff constraints. So how can we do it? So all of that keeps me motivated, and that's why this particular technology, right now best known as the NeuroVizr, is a meaningful project for me. One, because it's tremendous fun, and I like having fun, and most importantly, it's productive fun. It's the kind of fun that gives you instead of takes away from you, because you can have fun, but then you pay for it. In this case, it's the kind of fun that you get returns, like you get interest on having fun. Well, at least to me, what is fun? Mental, conscious exploration, music, gorgeous light displays. All of these things are fun. That's what I was raised Roman Catholic, French Canadian, quite devout. Thought I was going to be a priest because I didn't know what other avenue there was. Oh, wow. And then I entered university in the late 60s. So if anybody has ever heard about it, sex, drug, rock and roll, it's pretty much it. And so then, and it was access to psychedelics and, weed. I never liked alcohol. I'm not, even though Canadian, I'm really not a beer drinker or it doesn't work for me. And then there was a bunch of weed. Everybody was smoking. And it was fun. You smoke, you're with your friends, you hang out, you laugh, you listen to music, you eat food. It's quite fine, but it's also, I felt like, and there's nothing against people that love weed. It doesn't really work well for me because I feel stupid when I get stoned. So I don't really like the feeling of stupid. That's just my take. Other people fly high, awesome, do your thing. Then there was psychedelics, and what psychedelics gave me was personal proof that there was a whole lot more in my headspace, to use the term at the time, than I thought. And then I became more exposed to classic or traditional, I'll say yogic processes. And I thought, I'm going to go for that. So I've got nothing against psychedelics. I think psychedelics are amazing. I don't really use much anymore. I don't really feel much inclined, although because of the work I do, I've been experimenting more with microdosing, and maybe we'll talk a bit more about that. But the thing that interests me at this point, well, there are a few things, but it's what I'll call psychoactive agents that will activate the inborn aspects of consciousness, psyche from the Greek, psychoactive agents. And in this case, all psychedelic compounds are psychoactive agents, but not all psychoactive agents are psychedelic compounds. So wait a minute. Wait a minute. And I like working with principles. And I'll say this last thing, then I'll let you talk some more. But is there a universal or fundamental psychoactive agent? One that is at the basis of everything else. And I think I know what it is. So either this is not my discovery, or maybe I'm deluded, but that I believe, in my perception, both personal and in study and research of others, is that the universal psychoactive agent is focused attention. I think focused attention, some kind of magical, energetic, I don't know why it does what it does, but I believe that is the critical issue, that the agency the innate agency of any psychoactive process is that it involves focused attention, bringing the mind, whatever that is, into a point where it gifts this other elements with some kind of special action. Like, in pranayamas, mainly out of a Hindu yogic tradition, but also a lot of Chinese Taoist traditions, you working with the breath. Okay, and that the word, we have to pick words, and the words may not be perfect, but we're kind of stuck with words. Okay, here you have your breath. Let's call it your common breath, your gross breath. You're breathing right now. I'm breathing right now. How do we enliven? How do we transform our common breath into psychic breath? I'm just choosing that word, psychic breath. Mm-hmm. It's remarkably easy, but it is like profound when you consider it, to turn common breath into psychic breath. The words we normally use, you pay attention to the breathing. You focus your attention into this fundamental activity that we call breathing. Mm-hmm. And when you take your breath and you attend to your breath, now something dimensionally additive has happened. Something has been engaged so that now its effect is functional for certain activities. So that's my thing these days, is detecting psychoactive agency, psychoactive agents. Yeah. And that, to me, opens up a massive door of not only new discovery, but kind of rediscovery of things that we recognize to be effective and meaningful, but we didn't quite consider them that way. So that's my game right now, is psychoactive agents. What is a psychoactive agent? I just wrote, I write papers all the time, because if I don't, I'll forget it. But so I just wrote one. I'll send it off to you and Jean, not for publication, but just for fun. Because what is a psychoactive agent? So I just wrote a paper on
I would be interested in that, and that was actually a question that was swimming in my head while you were talking about it. What defines? Because for me, I go back to philosophy a lot of times when people use words that I'm not familiar with. And Aristotle's like, to get to the basis of any argument, you have to define.
Here we go.
Yeah,
okay, go.
I'm an Aristotelian for sure.
Okay, all
reality,
right.
Reality. But
categorize.
yeah. The primary cause, the formal cause.
So go.
I was going to say, with psychoactives, I think you're right, though, in labeling it something that is bringing focused attention. And in so many ways, I think it kind of ties in with a lot of the elements that make up the law of affirmation and law of attraction and that type of thing. Yeah. When you put your focus on something and try to block everything else out and just really get into that groove of thinking on that one thing, you kind of attract it in a way, whether you're tapping into God through prayer or through some other activity or something. You're kind of just isolating that to a point where you're putting all your attention and strength on it to try to bring it more into fruition. So I mean, it's a great way of putting it, psychoactive.
To me, you can use psychoactive agents in one of two ways. I'm taking a risk here because it's maybe an oversimplification. One is for, again, we're stumbling around with the words, so pardon me. I'll just, we either use the psychoactive agent to refine our awareness, or we use psychoactive agents to learn how to magically manipulate things.
So would both of those be utilitarian?
Well, I mean, I think the second one is more self-serving, small s, self. And the first one, the refining awareness, is more capital S, self-serving. Now, I know, like, it's kind of a, is that okay? Anyway, what I note is that there are lots of ways of magically manipulating the subtle elements, right? I call that magic. Magic is not, well, classically there's black and white, there's that, is that true or not? But I think so. But that, I'm stubborn, I accept that I'm stubbornly resistant to certain things. Like, I don't really, again, it's not like this is the best way to make friends, but I'm not really into the affirmation, law of attraction thing, because I know there. Okay, you give me the little bit of swearing room here, not
Go
like
ahead. Yeah,
heavy
yeah,
duty
it's
swear,
fine.
right?
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of shit that I want, and I can magically get it. But just because I want it doesn't mean that it's good for me.
No, no,
I
I
have to.
agree. I agree.
I recognize and I respect kind of what I'll call, and this is sometimes used in the negative. I respect magical thinking. I respect that there are ways to make your life better and the lives of others better by bringing things into actuality that are needed. That's very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm stubborn, and that's good and bad. That I'm more inclined to wanting to refine awareness than to get reality to be the way I would like it to be.
Mm-hmm. I see what you mean. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So when I do the work that I do, in this case, through the NeuroVizr Visor project, which is going quite well, I try to understand what works and then make sure that what it works for is as positive as possible. Because I've had people, the reaction when they experience some aspect of the NeuroVizr or what I'm doing, they immediately it's like, ooh, this could be used for mind control. I thought, well, yeah, but that's not really the point. Like fire is really good to keep you warm and cook your food, but it's really bad to stick your hand in. So, it's this, the issue of ethics, and I don't want to go, like sideways in the whole thing, but, we have a lot of talk about intention. And I think at a more fundamental level than intention is motivation. Like your intention might be I use this example before, it's dumb, I'll make it short. There's a course on online banking, and there are two people that sign up for the course, and they both want to learn all about online banking. What's their intention? I want to learn all about online banking. However, why? Intention asks the question, what? Motivation asks the question, why? So going back to this little micro class of two people on online banking, it turns out one is a young woman from an undeveloped society, and she wants to learn all about it so that she can help other women get funding for micro projects to improve their life in the village. That's what she wants to do. The other person is there because they want to learn how to steal online from people's banking accounts, and they need to know all about online banking to do that. So the what is, I want to learn all about online banking. The why is, to me, the kind of the secret sauce in that activity. So, like why do something, to me, is intimately associated with the what.
Right.
So,
and why, and the why connects with the people that are willing to try out the process, right? That are willing to follow you in a way. They connect with you more on that why, that motivating factor, rather than what the device is or what it can do.
Yeah. And so I think, I don't know, in this upcoming September issue of your Biohackers Magazine, you've given me a chance to express some ideas there and also interview some fantastic people, which I'll talk about in a moment, a little bit. But that, we submitted to you a white paper that I wrote with my business partner, Christian Barman, a couple of years ago. And it's called Entertainment for a Change. And I've arrived at, not just myself and my team. We've arrived at a perception or a belief that right now the most direct way to engaging people in positive cognitive processes is through entertainment. That high on the list of people's needs right now are safe, short-term access to relieving experiences. You just have like a shit of a day, or there's an appetite we have for good feelings, and that's just innate. We all have an appetite for good feelings, and it really stands out when you experience a lot of bad feelings. So there's that contrast of carrot and stick. So and it turns out to be a really smart thing to do, because in the studies, the legitimate scientific studies, it turns out that that enjoyment, that dopamine there's some people that like to go biochemical on it, but that thing is a massive effector in new learning and growth. That when you do a neuroplastic method, if that methodology creates that complex neurochemical state called enjoy, that it works better, that novelty, surprise is a critical core element of the adaptive process. And that knowing how to let go, because that's what surprise kind of does. It pops you out of your expectation. It's a surprise. You didn't see that coming. You're watching a movie and that it goes pop and you, wow. And you get this thrill, this rush of wowness. And that is something that we can use in a positive way. We can use this thing where you kind of set it up. And that's what I do with the light sound processes. Is I do my best to reflect the cognitive process of attention and discovery. It is so far away from brain entrainment, which is very good for what it does. It's a top-down process. It reinforces patterning. It's very low on neuroplastic adaptability because there's not really anything exciting in it that provokes change. So this issue of knowing how to put together the subjectivity of experience and the objectivity of things like neurological processes gives us a huge advantage. Like I think the innate, a position I have is that our brain is naturally psychedelic. What I mean by that, our brain is fully capable of moving out of a common ordered state into a temporary state of low order or high entropy, and then returning back again to the ordered state. It is so fundamental that it's built into our circadian cycle. Every 24 hours, we have to go a little crazy, and if we don't, we'll go insane. One of the interviews that I'm happy to introduce into your magazine in September is with Luis Luna, one of the patriarchs in indigenous psychedelic use. He's a highly educated PhD, has spent his life a little bit older than me. Look forward to that interview with Luis. And when we were talking for the interview, he said, and I told him I would give him credit for this, so I am right now. But he said, each of us becomes a shaman every night when we dream. And, this highlights the issue that it is not only normative, it's actually mandatory that our brain we talk about neuroplasticity, right? The ability of the brain to change in positive ways. I want to introduce a new, it's not a new term, but a new use of a term. It's called neuroelastic. There's neuroplastic and neuroelastic. So plastic means that you can change the shape of something into a new shape and it stays that way. That's why you can mold plastic. Plastic is an old Greek term meaning change shape, stay there. But also we have to have neuroelasticity to be able to move in and out of a range of cognitive states. That's healthy. If you get stuck in the dream, that's bad. And if you get stuck in the waking rationalization, that's bad. The stuckness is the issue. So our brain has not only the ability as an adult, to change in positive ways and stay there, but it also has the innate characteristic of being neuroelastic, which means you can go in and out like an elastic band. You can do that, let it go, and boom, it goes back to a state before. So you can go from waking into sleep, from sleeping into dreams back into hypnopompic into waking state, then hypnagogic, the so-called waking dreams that we talked about last time. So we have sleeping dreams and wake. Our brain, it's not like it knows how to do it. It is made to behave like this. So as well as neuroplastic qualities, thank God, if you do it right for positive, because you can also have neuroplastic that ends up in problems. Right. It's called bad habits. Right. But we also have this elasticity of being able to move in and come out. Move in and come out, in and out of all. We have to have this like free range chickens, we don't want to be put in a pen and stay there. So this idea of our brain is naturally psychedelic, what I mean by that is that our brain has the innate ability to move creatively, biologically, in and out of a kind of a continuum of different aspects, different states. And that's healthy. That's healthy. And one of the things that I try to do with light and sound signaling is to help exercise the brain to do that. Like if physically, okay, I don't do enough exercise, but okay, I'm more of a Qigong guy than a yoga guy. But like, let's say back bends. If I never do a back bend, and I have to do a back bend, that's going to be a problem. I'm going to need help. I'm going to get halfway over. I'm going to fall down. Why? Because I can't. Why? Because I don't do it. Now, if I did a back bend a little bit every day, right? There is that neuroplastic shaping. However, more important than the neuroplastic shaping, because we don't want to trade one cubic static for another cubic static. We want that fluidity in cognition, in awareness. Consciousness, we want to be able to move in and out of all these states of consciousness. These days, there's a little bit of I think an over exaggeration on flow states. Flow states by their very nature are time bound. You can't live in a flow state. Otherwise, it's not flow, it's just living. That you cannot have flow states without friction states. Friction and flow are that yin and yang. One is related to the other. Without one, you don't have the other. And that's why this concept of the 4 stages of flow, struggle followed by, resolve, and then flow, and then release. I think that now the neurology is characterized by these sequences of things that flow has a relationship to, among other things, of course, focused attention. But anyway, so my interest in my effort is to see as much as we can, because it's not a solitary exploration, what's the natural dynamics of the brain as a complex adaptive system. And I think understanding not only the neuroplastic ability to create new states, but those new states are not static states, that against the background of change is the ability to move in. I mean, look at your day to day. It's early evening for you, early mid-evening for you. And throughout the day, how many different aspects of consciousness have you visited? I mean, if you look at it, the waking state is not one state. You have all these emotional fluctuations and degrees of concentration and, certain discomforts and then rewards, and that your day has been a rolling terrain of a variety of states.
Of course.
And to be adaptive, you've got to be able to kind of flow, to use that word again in a different meaning. You have to be able to smoothly transition in what I'm labeling now neuroelasticity. Well, I have to clarify. Technically, it's hardly ever used, but when you talk about neuroplasticity, it changes into something. Technically, neuroelasticity is if you don't keep reinforcing it, it will reverse back to where it was before. So the technical definition of neuroelastic is reversible neuroplasticity.
I see.
The more simple term is use it or lose it. So you can make new positive change with neuroplastic processes. However, if you don't reinforce that new state or change bit by bit in the neuroelastic, the neuroplastic process will reverse itself back to its previous state because it's not being reinforced. So I'm using neuroelastic in a different way than it's conventionally used in neuroscience. So to make that clear, it's like I'm not dumb, I'm making a mistake. I'm conscious of that, but I'm trying to frame it in the same way that I've tried to frame brain engagement in its relationship to entrainment. Brain engagement is a bottom-up motivator for change. Brain entrainment is a top-down reinforcement of habituated patterns. So that's just what that is. And of course, they're not really purely separate. This kind of reductionistic, abstract, this Aristotelian categorization is false. So neuroelastic. What does that mean to me? It means that our brain is naturally capable of moving in and out of different ranges of adaptive behavior kind of fluidly. Like you can't, it's really important that we have sleeping dreams, apparently, for memory consolidation and for emotional resolution and review. But you can't stay dreaming 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
There's a certain amount of REM sleep that we should have. And there's a certain amount of waking that we should have. There's a certain amount of deep sleep we should have. There's a certain amount of waking dreams that we should have. Our culture doesn't support that, the fourth waking dream thing, but we need it. It's built into us, for God's sake. So psychedelic brain to me is what I would call a brain that is capable, psychedelic, mind manifesting. It's able to manifest all these different qualities, and the activation, going back, like I haven't forgotten, the activation is the domain of the psychoactive agent. Mm-hmm. The psychoactive agent is the activator of fluid neuroelastic behavior against the background of neuroplastic change.
And this psychoactive agent is technically what you're focused on producing, right? For people to be able to tap into this and use this on their brain in their leisure time.
I mean, that's fair. And it's not only like once you have a psychoactive agency working, then also helping to guide it along what I technically call a vector, or you can say a theme, move it once it's mobilized to move it towards a particular theme, what I'll technically a probability outcome, a probability state. Okay, when it comes to like conventional psychedelics, this is the set and setting thing, that the compound itself is an activator. It's a psychoactive agent, and it's mobilized or activated this quality of moving into a more information-rich entropic state. Fantastic. However, in and of itself, it is not that state. That the state is a combination of all sorts of factors. That's why set and setting. Mm-hmm. If you do a hit of acid and you're in a very positive, like you enter into it with a good set point, meaning your emotional state and the circumstance, your motivation is all cool.
Yeah.
And then you're with one or two loving people in a gorgeous environment. That is really shaping the conscious outcome.
Right.
But if you take the same hit of acid and you're with three assholes and you're out partying in the streets, driving around in a car,
not the same.
No, so that's why the psychoactive agent enables a higher order of experience. Mm-hmm. And that is innate to the brain's processing, that is highly influenced by all kinds of factors. So, when I think about it, like, what do pain and pleasure have in common? Because we experience both. Our brain is naturally developed to be able to have both of those ranges, and they're big ranges. Excuse me. I gave this example in the past, so it's a dumb example, but I guess I like dumb examples. But that, if right now, if somebody wandered in the room where you are, snuck in with an ice pick and began to jam it repeatedly into your left knee, that would be very painful. If something like somebody snuck in and they rubbed some kind of secret potion on your left knee and you had an orgasm in your left knee, I'm not sure if that's possible, but let's say you could. Right. I would call the left knee orgasm very pleasurable and the left knee ice pick very painful. What do those two radically different experiences have in common?
They tell us that we're alive. I don't know.
Okay, that's maybe true, but I would say more simply, your attention would go to your left knee.
It's simple, yeah.
Right. I mean, right now, until I started talking about your left knee, you probably weren't aware consciously of your left knee. So I say right now, just put your attention in your left knee. Okay. Stop doing that. Put your attention in your breathing. Feel your breathing. Just feel it. Okay. Now combine the two. Feel your breathing and your left knee. And in energetic and Qigong processes, you're directing the charged psychic breath into your left knee. The thing of attention in relation to information, because we so-called live in the information age, and information, what is it? Again, I return to this because it's one of the fundamental references. I struggled with what is information. The big triad. Matter, energy, information, and turns out we don't know what any one of them are. But let's make up some story here. Information, to me, was clarified by Gregory Bateson, a fabulous eclectic thinker and anthropologist by trade, and he did it for me in two bumper stickers. He said, information is news of change. Information is news of change. if there's no change, there's no information. Then he clarified it further and he said, information is a difference that makes a difference. It's a difference that makes it. So the change, difference, delta in mathematics, right? I'm totally engrossed by the dynamics of change as it relates to information. Information is news of change, and it's a difference that makes a difference. So I won't go all tech on this, but the hottest current brain theory, well, there are a few of them, but is predictive coding. And you're going to see everybody talking about it. I talk about it all the time. It's an evolved process. I'm not going to go into the depth of it right now, but our brain harvests experience from the present moment, so-called bottom-up experience. It harvests it and catalogs it in a library of past so it can predict the future. That's the basic triad of predictive coding. That our top-down, our neocortex, the smart zone in our brain, has no direct experience of the present moment. It has literally no idea of the present moment because it lives in a library of catalog past experiences and does its best to project correctly into the future. Bottom-up sensory experience gives us the moment right now, and then the two try to cooperate. So the present moment is not only the source of initial information, it's also the clarifier as to whether our predictions are true or not. So to me, the trick of discovery, the trick of, I would risk even healing, is to coax the brain to settle into real-time present experience, which kind of lines up with a lot of the concepts, the power of now and all of this. Right. That to recognize, and it goes really complex. Carl Friston and his active inference theory. There's a lot of high order stuff going on. So I try to access the understandable aspects of that. So far, so good, and put it into an application based on that theory. And right now, the idea is to know what is true based on experience, and to also recognize what is not true based on experience, and let our mind be honest about that. Let our mind be honest so that the confirmation bias that we have in trying to figure out what the hell's going on with life, that confirmation bias doesn't overrule real experience in the present moment. And that's what I'm trying to exercise, this capacity in the brain. And because we don't really like work that much, we would much prefer to have fun. I'm trying to do it in a way that is engaging and entertaining, satisfying. It's like it's health food that actually tastes good. And you're not even eating it because it's healthy. It's just that you like it so much, right? All right. Anyway, so I'm easy to talk. So please talk so I can listen.
No, it's okay. I was going to ask a kind of a follow-up off of what you were just saying there. So you're doing this activity, but maybe you start doing it for a utilitarian purpose of fun, like you say, or you get some enjoyment out of it. But the real reason I think why you would be doing it, and stop me if I'm putting words in your mouth here, but is to create that awareness, like you were saying in the beginning, or to put yourself in the present moment, to have a good present moment experience, but you're keeping the future just in mind, of like what you were saying in the beginning, dementia and all these other chronic diseases that can come at you. If you're keeping this brain in its optimal state and enjoying the present moment and being able to have those great neuroplasticity moments, you're kind of forming yourself through this activity that you're doing in your leisure time, and making yourself become the best person for those future years. So to prepare for that in a sense.
Well, I mean, if we can do that, that's fantastic. And yes, that's the way you've characterized it sounds, in a way, in a pleasurable context, exercising your ability to be in the present moment so that information is still guiding you towards good choices and positive experiences is kind of at the heart of any kind of developmental, spiritual, psychological process. That I think it's pretty true that unless activity is done to the opposite, that as we age, both our bodies and our minds become more stiff and less able to make adaptive changes fluidly. I think that's reason. I think you can say that as reasonably true.
I agree. Yeah.
Like, what is it about novelty? What is it about surprise that can be disturbing and at the same time delightful? Like, there are bad surprises, right? There are bad surprises, and there are good surprises. And I'll say brain. I don't know. Mind. I don't even. Nobody knows what it is. So all I can say with some amount of certainty is that I seem to have one, and meaning a mind. It's something is happening, and that the health of the physical organ that we call the brain is intimately related to the well-being of my mind. So that much, I don't know, coincidence,
the soul,
causal,
the mind,
blah blah blah. But a kick in the head can really screw you up when it comes to cognition. So we can work with the brain psychologically is kind of work blah blah the mind. It's too complicated. So let's look at the things that we don't normally value. And like, I'll come back to the focused or focal, you can say focused or focal attention. And it seems to be the cardinal factor in psychoactivity, that there's something that arouses a natural process. And whatever that arousing agent is, attention seems to be really a critical aspect of it. So that thing, I think, as I've already said, that our brain is naturally psychedelic, meaning it's capable of moving in and out of mind manifesting behaviors, where you get to see into your own cognition. You become increasingly aware of your states of consciousness. And those states of consciousness can be quite diverse. If that's true, if that the brain is naturally, in this sense, psychedelic, from my view, it seems to be that one of the deeply seated aspects of discovery in the psychedelic sense is humor. I think funny is a surprising psychedelic state, rather short in duration for the most part. But, going to predictive coding brain theory, you predict, and then you see with bottom-up real moment experience whether your prediction is valid. And that's the craft and the timing of humor, is you set up, and then you hit them with a punchline, and it's not what you expected. And we have this thing called funny. Like, what is that? Like, and we laugh. It's built right into our respiratory autonomic nervous system. We just don't have a feeling of it's funny. We actually have this thing called laughter. So, how organic can you get? Like, what is this? I think it's a dose of a psychoactive agent, which happens to be something that you can do when you craft a story. Or, like, why is slapstick? Well, because the guy in the banana peel, normally they don't do that. It's a surprise. And this, slapstick is probably the crudest form of humor, and yet it's kind of funny, right?
I mean, how many videos do people watch of fails and everyone falling down and stuff?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm a believer in, a few things that I've already expressed. One of them is, just because a state is uncommon doesn't mean it's abnormal. So just its uncommonness is just a feature of how we metabolize, but it doesn't mean that it's abnormal to be experiencing this in an uncommon way.
But does it mean, because it's uncommon, does it mean that it's not right for it to be common?
Well, it's probably an issue of dose, like how much. If you're laughing all day, nonstop, you're probably nuts. Lay off the weed, right? Or you're nuts, or unfortunately both. But so I think the amount of time, that's a funny one. The amount of time is in relationship to what we call dose. And I think that as a dose, we really can't take too much humor. When you laugh so hard and so long you piss yourself, that's pretty much the biological limit of how much humor you can tolerate at that. But it's like, when kids get the giggles, they can tolerate the giggles a lot longer than you. Like, to your kid, it's a lot funnier to them than it is to you. At a certain point, it's not funny anymore for you, and yet it's still hilarious for them. So Hans Selye, I think I wrote it. Yeah. Oh, it's the little things that count. Yeah, I sent you that article for the magazine. It's the little things. It explores microdosing. That's a very interesting saying. I reflected on it because we'll talk a little bit about drug-free microdosing, which is what we're launching in Amsterdam in October. But we'll get to that. But it's the little. Why is, you've heard the saying, in life, it's the little things that count. Have you heard that?
Yes, of course.
Okay. When you hear it, do you give it validity? Do you think, that's bullshit, or yeah, seems true? Like, what's your reaction to that saying? It's the little things that count.
I give it validity more than I would discount it, I think.
Okay. Why?
Because I think that a lot of times moments that are part of our everyday life and that we experience with people that we are around a lot really make up a lot of our memories that we look back on with joy.
Okay.
If that makes sense. Is there a right answer? Am I wrong or right?
I don't know. I'll agree with you just because you're a nice guy. But yes, I agree. I agree. And to me, I oftentimes use physical exercise in an analogy form because now our society has pretty much a developed appreciation, even though we don't necessarily do it, but that, like, is it better to just like kick ass, push it every Saturday, or is it better to do some amount of conservative activity regularly over time? Which one is going to generate the second one, right? So you think, well, that's kind of obvious at this point, even though sports medicine has had to really hit the dagger out of our head with more is better. We realize, no, that's not true at all. So in that case, when it comes to exercise, you could say it's the little things that count. It's the regularity of a certain, perhaps rather modest dose of activity. And yet, in a summary sense, you're going to get a lot of benefit out of it. So here I'm going to stretch the analogy a little bit. With exercise, not that it's the only way, but one way that works is to microdose your exercise, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you follow the simple kind of calculation based on dose, reinforcing using a psychoactive agent of low dosage regularly over time has the strong probability of generating positive change and outcome.
Okay. I can see the point behind that.
It's like, okay, I don't argue it as being the only way, but it is one way. And when you look at the commonality of life, speaking of common and uncommon, most people would find, maybe reluctantly, an agreement in the statement, it's the little things that count. If you do something really nice for your wife once in a while, or you are consistently kind and caring over time in all sorts of little things, which one is going to give a better outcome in your marriage?
Definitely the second one.
There. So activation, psychoactive agents can work very effectively. Once in a while, a big thrill. You go to the circus. However, exercising the fluid elasticity of change, so that even if you hit a big speed bump, okay, you're back at the steering wheel after that. To me, it is the inherent proving or wisdom in so many methods that I look at now. I'd like to view things in terms of principle. I like to learn in terms of principle, because once you see the principle, then you can more easily detect it in all sorts of circumstances that overtly may seem to be of no relationship. Like right now, microdosing and exercise and keeping your wife happy with you all seem to be able to follow the same principle.
Yeah, it's the little things that count.
It's the little things that count. Yeah. So when it comes to microdosing, following this, I've put together, and we're launching it. It's not a commercialized product yet, but with the Visor headset, there are different sessions and different things you can do, and that's in the package right now, so-called signature collection. But I've designed what I'm calling, and I think it's a credible name. It's not a bullshit hook. It's drug-free microdosing. The idea of using light and sound as a dose-dependent psychoactive agent that moves in a certain vector or theme and done with some regularity has a strong probability of generating the same benefits as compound compound microdosing, because it's the same neurological principle. The psycho, if you order something online, do you really care whether it's delivered to your door by FedEx, UPS, or DHL? Because that's the delivery agent. It's the action, the endpoint, the success of getting the thing that you wanted and you ordered that's important. The agent is influential but not critical. So to me, the psychoactive agent that you use to get your attention to go into your left knee is a choice factor, depending on what agent you're most susceptible to, what fits you philosophically or socially is acceptable to you. Maybe sitting around a fire with drumming is socially acceptable to you, or maybe it's weird shit and you would never do that. So there is an ability, a certain amount of liberty as to what psychoactive agency is comfortable for you. Part of the problem, I've done good research into social statistics around microdosing. It holds a lot of promise. It's also really contentious in terms of does it really work and what's the proof and but that one of the main issues that people struggle with is, and statistically it's actually at the top, is the illegal status of these psychedelic compounds used in microdosing. Now, for some of us, doesn't mean anything. As a matter of fact, for some of us, I'd say that we stand the risk of romanticizing the psychedelic compound too much. That we get more of a rush of the fact that we're microdosing acid than we are actually in the microdosing process. Like, ooh, I know friends that microdose that have an extent of psychedelic background and experience. And the fact is, they do a little bit more than microdose. They want to get a little bit high. The idea with microdosing is that you don't really feel any of the psychoactivity. It activates a process, but you don't really feel it, other than the self-evaluation. Am I more creative? Am I less anxious? It's like hard to know.
It's more subjective and less symptomatic, right?
That's why the what we'll call the placebo, which is an incredibly powerful natural tool for well-being. But that for some people, the fact that they're using a psychedelic compound is the sexy part, And by the way, in my world, using light and sound and the concept of stacking, you could stack a compound with the drug-free light and sound. That's okay, because the evidence is that you can combine psychoactive agents for a more dynamic summary effect. So that you can combine drumming with staring into a fire, right? So you can stare into a fire. And by the way, the fire is the first so-called mind machine, because fire, using the range of what I'll call natural combustibles, wood, weeds, dung, when fire happens from the typical common fuel, it flickers. Have you noticed that fire flickers? And it flickers pretty much centric to the alpha range. So, what does alpha dominance do? Alpha dominance allows you to maintain focus free of distraction. You're calm and clear. You're not fighting the distractions. You're not having to hold in concentration. Alpha dominance, and no, it's not going to yield Satori and all these things. It's just a really nice state that you can. So when you just look into the campfire or the fireplace or whatever, like a friendly fire, not your house is on fire, but a friendly fire, right? And you just surrender to that. It actually coaxes you into, because it's flickering. It's a form of brain entrainment. It's a form of brain entrainment. So you stare into the fire and boom, 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 boom. Here you're stacking the drumming as a psychoactive agent with the flickering fire, which is a psychoactive agent. Neither of them are biochemical. There's no compound that you have to ingest. And you can see that it motivates that neuroelastic shifting in and out of common and uncommon. And, our brain developed in the very same environment as fire. It isn't like, wow, that's really weird. Well, no, they're all of the same physics. It's all of the same planet. It's all the same evolution. Of course, they should stack well. So, this is, I don't know, we're kind of dancing around the fire right now, at least for me. I really enjoy, unfortunately, I enjoy talking.
No, you're fine.
Other people, but I love it because why do I love it? Because it feels right and it feels good at the same time. Some things things feel good, but they don't really feel right. Some things feel right, but they don't really feel that good. For this one, it both feels good and it feels right. I feel that this is potentially precious because life is, frankly, not that long. Old people say that. And that the other is that there is suffering. And the suffering can be so strong that it obliterates the preciousness and the beauty of celebrating life. So, I like spending my days doing this. It's okay.
Yeah. I mean, going back to your product though, there is a little bit of that demand, right, that the device uses. And you could make the argument maybe to someone who isn't a lot real familiar or associated with those types of devices, that there is a tiny bit of not bad suffering, but suffering in a sense of trying to place your attention when the pattern has changed and everything. Because I've used the device and it is a little bit of a demand that you feel, and it's not a bad thing. I don't want anyone to think it's a bad thing.
Right.
I'm just going back to what you just said about suffering. In a way, suffering in our sufferings on human life on Earth, we do kind of refine our character and become better people a lot of times because of our suffering. Yeah. And I'm just tying this into your device here of how we can relieve a lot of that suffering, but there is still that character building quality of making someone go through something that is a little bit hard. Like exercise is hard when you first start it, right? I mean, it's a harder thing, but you make it fun. You make it fun and you provide the rewards and everything. So.
Yeah. Well, okay. I have a few things to say about that. You're correct. I would caution right now the too liberal use of the word suffering. Okay. And I would substitute the word challenge.
Okay, challenge.
Right? That we experience challenge. And the reason that I do what I do in the design motif of the NeuroVizr experience is, to the best of my ability, built upon the known neurology of neuroplastic change. And some amount of what I'll call common sense, that's a risk. And then some liberty in terms of artistic expression. So, but I try to keep it neurological. Right. So there's a 3-step formula to any neuroplastic method, fundamentally. Again, I'm a principles kind of guy. Mm-hmm. And then there's a 4th secret sauce that makes it work better. So the 3 things are the method, the process, the technique, the experience must captivate or draw in your attention. It gets your attention. Ideally, although not absolutely, but ideally, it's attention without tension. Mm-hmm. It should not require that you concentrate. Concentrate is attention with effort. Concentration is attention without effort. Mm-hmm. Like with the ice pick and the left knee orgasm, you don't have to try to pay attention to your left knee. The experience of pleasure, the experience of pain gets your attention. So the method should be initially captivating. It should get your attention and relatively well keep your attention. There's something about it that makes it, for a mother gazing at their newborn child, they don't have to try. They don't have to try at all. Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing, is focused attention in a method. Something has to bring your attention away from what you're doing into what's happening. Mm-hmm. Number 2, and this is triggered by what you just said, there has to be this thing called marginal demand. Marginal demand means, if to use the exercise again, if you can lift 20 kilos, if you can lift 45 pounds, I'm not going to give you 90 pounds to train. I'm going to give you just a little bit more than 45 pounds. Why? Because with some willingness, and that's the 3rd thing, by the way, if you're willing to go and this is also true of all the flow theory and Csikszentmihalyi and all of the that domain of flow concept, that the skill level has to be met with just a little bit of challenge. A little is the cardinal element, not too much. So focused attention, marginal demand, and open-minded willingness are the 3 things that come together to have a neuroplastic method or a neuroplastic technique. The 4th thing, what I call the secret sauce, that makes those first 3 work exponentially better, is that very complex neurochemical state called enjoy. If you have the experience that you enjoy this, well, when you think about it, what the hell is that? What does enjoy mean? Well, we can talk about dopamine and serotonin. There's that sort of perspective, which is realistic but incomplete. If you get those four things, focused attention, marginal demand, open-minded willingness or belief or faith, and number four, if it really generates enjoyment, we know that successfully repeated generates neuroplastic change, positive neuroplastic change. So to me, Hans Selye, who I call the great grandfather of microdosing. Yeah, I don't know if you saw what I sent you. That it's the little things that count. I say that Fadiman is the father of microdosing, which is claimed, and that there is also, however, a grandfather and a great grandfather of microdosing that aren't given credit, the lineage. And Fadiman is the father, and the grandfather is Donald Hebb, the Canadian physiologist that discovered in like the late 40s what he called Hebbian learning, which is actually neuroplasticity. So I say Hebb is the grandfather of microdosing, and Hans Selye is the great grandfather with his theories of stress. And out of Selye, two things are really critically important. Well, three things. One is that stress in and of itself is not bad. It's the element of motivation and challenge that exists in life and in organisms. That number two, the nature is that this challenging experience can either be positive or negative. It can be what he called eustress, EU from the Greek, eustress or distress. So there is a eustress, there is a positive aspect to challenge as a motivator. And this is really important to support my premise of the psychoactive agent, that to the organism, the source or type of the stressor is not that important. It's the degree of the challenge that is functional to the organism. So the thing that is giving you a challenge is not as important as to how much of a challenge is it giving you. So that's why I line him up, Hans Selye, as the great-grandfather of microdosing, because he would say a small dose of a psychoactive agent presenting a little bit of a challenge, then you join in with Hebbian learning, and you do it repeatedly and you reinforce it over time. Come to Fadiman, the psychoactive agent is a psychedelic compound. You're going to get positive progressive probability of neuroplastic change.
I like it. Thank you for breaking that down. That's great.
Well, I don't know. Are you going to publish it? Because I sent you, that's all in the article. It's the little things that count.
Yeah, of course.
So it's on you. If you don't publish it, your readers are going to complain.
There you go.
But anyway, so this is my thing at this point. If you add all those things up together, and, I spent 25 years of my adult life practicing certain Hindu yogic and Chinese Taoist techniques, many of which involve certain kinds of breathing techniques. And there are lots and lots of techniques with the breath. To appreciate at the basic level that you can do respiratory, diaphragmatic, breath of fire, all these things. However, what is the foundational, what is more universal there is you can turn common coarse breathing into psychic breathing, so-called. We call it some of a special breathing. Psychic breathing is usually the translation into English from the Sanskrit, but that what you do is you put your focused attention in the breath, and boom, it's now a special motivator for change, the breath. And what's the thing that converts the breath into this thing called your attention? When you look at the body scan techniques, autogetic training, like relaxation response, Benson, the whole, the three or more classic body scan techniques. They work because of how you use your focused attention in relation to certain somatic qualities of awareness. So, I'm fascinated by psychoactive agency, that it comes out, it's well developed in brain priming theory. There are like 6 classic brain priming agencies. I won't get into them now. And it's like, well, wait a minute, this stuff is starting to make sense, literally making sense. Meaning you said that maybe even more universal under all of these things is spending time in present moment experience.
Right.
I think that most of the answers to our questions, most of the solutions to our problems can be accessed in the honesty of the present moment.
Right. And you were, as you said earlier, that awareness is so vital, I think, to make us stop in the present moment and enjoy that present moment. And maybe with more connections and more neuroplasticity and more brain engagement activities, we can bring ourselves to that level of awareness to kind of stay in the state that's going to make us happier and live more fulfilling lives. So Garnet, I wanted to ask about microdosing and that new e-psychedelics and that type of thing that you're thinking about going into and launching sometime in
I'm
October,
going into it.
right? Oh, you are. Sorry, not thinking about going into it.
It's
for
a deal.
for Timu's conference, right? In Biohackers
Correct.
Summit. I believe it's in October in Amsterdam.
Yeah, 14, 15, I think.
Are you going
we're
to
there.
do a release there? Okay, yeah.
It's a drug-free microdosing, and the release is scheduled for there. And it doesn't take the place of brain gym and mind states and better sleep and brain optimizers. I mean, those are all fantastic animals that live in the forest. This I've been waiting for what I think is the right time, timing to bring this out. And I think we have enough, and thanks in good part to efforts that with you and John and Arjun with the magazine, that now I'm getting enough profile as an individual. Like people will talk to me and do things. And then the other is the project itself, NeuroVizr, is gaining enough attention and some amount of early appreciation that now is a good time to introduce drug-free microdosing. Because the fact is, I did it. I didn't do it just recently. I crafted, because I did a lot of research to get to the point where I think it has validity, and the validity has been proven to me theoretically over time. The concept of the psychoactive agent and all the things I've been discussing, you've been patiently listening. It's like, okay, now is a good time. Now is a good time. So drug-free microdosing is not in conflict with compound microdosing. If anything, the rationale of drug-free microdosing should support the rationale of compound microdosing, because they're both based on the same underlying capacity of little things that count, small doses repeated over time, and the principal concept of psychoactive agency, that the DHL or FedEx, you don't really care who delivers, and you may have a preference, maybe you own stock in FedEx, I don't know, but right now, to me, the exciting thing about microdosing is the potential for conservative, reliable change over time using acceptable psychoactive agents that personally for you are acceptable. Personally, I make a kind of a joke is that, with this concept that it's now legal in all states of mind, right? To sort of play on the legality issue, which is a real big deal. There are people that have a concern, maybe they're in a certain job or in a certain social group or whatever, and the issue of legality is important to them, and I respect that. And also, it isn't even just the legality issue; it's the trustworthiness. If you order compounds off the net, especially dark web, I wouldn't recommend that, because it isn't just that it's legal or illegal. It's is this real or not? Is it tainted? Is it actually what it says to be? And then the other thing is, even if it is, are you really able to regulate the dosage accurately? Because if you're using mushrooms, for example, for the psilocybin psilocin aspect, different strains have different potency, and if you grind it or process it, how many micrograms am I really getting of the compound? There are a set of challenges that surround compound microdosing that are different than does it work or not. One is, are you able to comfortably accept whatever risk comes with legality? Yes or no? The other is, do you know that the compound that you're using, do you have a trustworthy source? Aside from the legality issue, is this good stuff or not? And the other is, well, dosage, because if it's supposed to be micro, how do I know? I took it, but I kind of got a little high. Well, maybe that was too much, or maybe I didn't really get high. I'm not sure. So right. there are questions, and people like Paul Austin and Microdose Institute, Paul Austin, the Third Wave, they're doing really, really good jobs at exploring this at an honest and ethical level without just taking the ride on a big wave of what I'll call the sexiness of psychedelics, the romantic relationship. I've been through that. As I mentioned, I went into university in the late 60s. Believe me, there's quite a lot of sexy romance, if you understand my terms, around psychedelics. It was very exciting, holding all kinds of promise. And then, you have this thing called reality knock on your door, and then you reassess and, have a more maturing, evolved appreciation.
Right. And that's what I think about your mission and what you're trying to do with the technology is it's not connected to something that sits in your body or something. And it takes a little bit of those worries away from it because it's just the device that taps into the brain's innate ability to go into these states. And this neuroplasticity, and it's just kind of nice because you're able to experience this and not get caught in all of these other thoughts that could be coming, as you're experiencing this. And you're able to still also not worry about having to leave reality because if you want to take it off, you just take it off, or you just
turn it on, turn it off.
Exactly. So
okay.
There's more control, I guess, is what I'm trying to say too. There's a little bit more control with it.
Yeah, I'd say the elements of risk go way down.
Right.
The only substantial risk is there are people that are seizure prone, either epileptic or photosensitive. And I mean, that's not new. That's old. They shouldn't use all kinds of pulsed signal devices. Even, the cautions that come up in video games now that, there'll be a statement. And so in terms of risk, that's the only risk. And, if a person has a history of seizure, don't use it. That's simple. And a photo-induced seizure is not the same as epilepsy. It doesn't mean like, oh, now I've got epilepsy. No, it doesn't mean that. And by and large, in a massive statistical review, if a person does have a reaction, there's no negative outcome. They might feel disoriented or like, oh, wow, what was that? But it doesn't mean that it's damaged your brain. It doesn't mean that you're now like you've somehow, I don't know, epilepsy is contagious or some kind of weird thought. So in terms of risk, it's a very, 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 very low order of risk. And because, in the device, you can like volume on, I'll call it stereo to date myself. I don't know what they call now. How you listen to music has a volume control. And even you set it at a certain level, okay, the music goes up and down, but it's so the same thing that, of course, you have volume on the sound. And you also have a light intensity slider where you can put the general intensity way down or in the middle or higher. And it's kind of, I mean, I don't know if you've ever done where you're in a car and you're listening to music and then the next day you jump in and turn on the engine and it's like, whoa, that's loud. Well, it wasn't loud yesterday. You were just it worked. Yeah. So that kind of subjective personal choice, it exists in the device, sound volume and general light intensity. It's up to you. Choose the one that works for you.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so when you're at this Biohacker Summit, you're also going to be a prominent speaker there. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're going to talk about, the main topics, without diving too much into it?
Well, spoiler alert, a lot of what I'm going to talk about, we've been talking about for the last almost 2 hours. So
you weren't going to talk about football or something random?
No, okay. So it's three things in terms of me talking, other than, catching me at the booth or over having a coffee.
Okay.
There's the keynote, which is going to be on drug-free microdosing. I'm trying to help people understand the principle within a relatively short period of time of psychoactive agent and the little things that count. And with as much assurance as I can is that I'm not criticizing or condemning compound microdosing. As I said, the fact is that what I want to point out should give increased validity to compound microdosing because of the applied neurology. So it's just that there are different, it's a horrible saying, different ways to skin a cat. I've never skinned a cat. I don't want to, but like there are different ways of achieving the same outcome, and choice is always good. The other is that I have 2 other side sessions in a room that accommodates, I think, up to 200 people for about 40 minutes, and one time each day. So it's different than the speaking keynote thing. And my plan right now with my team is I'm going to talk more in depth about drug-free microdosing and answer questions about it on day 1. And on day 2, open it up to all the other stuff that people have questions about, in like mind states and brain gym and brain optimizers, because it's a big package. Part of it's not a mistake, but part of my challenge, to go back to that word, is that in the NeuroVizr signature collection, there are lots of different sessions, and each category is defined for certain uses and purposes. So it's not a one session works for all. You can make choices, and that remains a little obscure. By the way, we have a personal guide for the NeuroVizr collection, and we're just finishing like an 80 or 90 page book, really, on the personal guide to drug-free microdosing. A lot of the things we've talked about, it's very nicely, well, I was going to say nicely written, but that's a bit like embarrassing because I wrote it. But anyway, the presentation is, I think, quite impactful and attractive. And it also, like in drug-free microdosing, you have 4 different protocols to use. I didn't make the protocols. We've got the Fadiman Stamets Microdosing Institute and the Fixed 2-Day. So actually built into the app, you can plug into how to use whatever theme you choose in one of the 4 popular or classic protocols, and to make it easier. And that way, if you want to stack with a compound, well, it's like, duh, here's the protocol. So I'll be talking at those 3 different venues, the keynote, and then 2 sidecar. Well, I think they call it the sanctuary. It's a special room with a stage for about 200 people. I think it's sit on the floor stuff. I'm not sure. Cool. So I'm going to try to, work it so people have the chance to ask me questions directly, and hopefully come up with some reasonable answers to their questions.
Very cool.
I like the live exchange thing. I get to know and learn all kinds of things from other people, and oftentimes I'm as interested as what's coming out of my mouth as they are, because I never really thought about it until they asked the question in that way. So it's I love learning, and learning is always best when shared. I mean, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
Are you going to show up there? Are you coming? Are you coming to Amsterdam?
I would like to. I'll have to check with my kids.
I'll check in with your wife and your kids. Can your daddy go? Come on.
There you go. Yeah, that might go over well. We'll see. Okay. I'll try and win some points beforehand, and
okay. Well, it's the little things that
count.
Okay, you got me already. Yeah.
Garnet, I did have one last question before I let you go.
Sure.
So talking about the NeuroVizr, and we're talking about the subjective experience of this neuroplasticity. When you're using it, time after time, and doing the little habits of trying it out.
Yeah.
Can you speak personally on how you've seen changes? Maybe not at first, but a little bit. Maybe whether it's your thinking patterns, you're less forgetful, or that type of thing. And then also talk about any studies, or I know you were doing. I want to say, if I remember correctly, you were doing some studies in California.
We finished it. We're in pre-publishing mode right now. So when you publish something, you can't have put it into the public before you publish it to get into journals. So right now we're like wiggling to try to get it out of the pre-publishing into the publishing status, so that we can then publicize the findings. But the findings are quite good. Makes sense. That's nice. Yes. Okay.
So subjectively, then, go ahead.
Okay. Personally, and I'll do the research thing first. There are 2 types of research. One is you look more at outcomes from something, and the other one is you look at how that something does what it does. It's very difficult to do the first one when you don't know what you're looking for. And when you have novel processes, like for example, if there was research done as to the efficacy of any of these sessions in brain entrainment, it would fail because it's not designed to do that. It's I could easily, actually in the brain gym, there are brain entrainment sessions. If you want classic brain entrainment, they're there. That's not difficult. As a matter of fact, it's really easy. So the first thing in research is, what category of research do you do first? Usually you look at, like, is it doing something good? Because if it's doing something bad, you're not going to research it anymore. Who cares? Don't do it. But if there's something good happening, why? What is it that's happening here that we can explore? So we are, as is expected, we're a small company, and the cost of doing high-level technological enabled research is quite expensive. So you've got to spend your money well. And we are in the process of 2 unofficial and 1 officially finished study in publishing status right now. So we know, and we're getting to that. The first question, subjectively for me, it's embarrassing to sometimes speak directly about oneself, at least it is for me, but let me try to characterize it. I've mentioned that I'm older, and almost everybody, it just freaks me out. But anyway, so in a couple of weeks I turn 74 in September. Thank you. My body's okay. It's got stuff. And I look after the stuff. When it comes to what I'll call my mind, here's the risk. My mind, in my personal experience, my mind works better now than at, say, 40 or 45 years old. And I was always a smart guy. But there's some quality to my cognition now that is better than before. I think it's impossible to point at one single thing. I have my spiritual practices, the Dzogchen tradition. Some people know what that means, non-dual school. So is that giving benefit? Well, I hope so. Otherwise, it's just kind of like a weird hobby. So I think in terms of clarity of awareness and cognition, I expect that that's having benefit. And there's now studies about the fact that it does. So that gives me confidence. Great. When it comes to the NeuroVizr work, the way I characterize it, again, slightly embarrassing, is that I know I'm smart, but I'm not this smart. There's something additive to my thinking. It's not even the thinking thing. So I give credit to 2 things. One is in the spiritual tradition, there's lineage. I think that I'm a very lucky man, and I experience a lot of blessings and grace. Now, any person can interpret that any way they want, but I'll say it like that. I think that I'm graced with a lot of insights. What I'll call them blessings. It doesn't seem like I'm generating it. I just have to say that. So okay, that's one thing. The other is that the way I interpret my experience, because it's been over 6 years that I've done an awful lot of this light sound stimulation, because I design it. I do, I'm a very atypical user because I do it all kinds of ways and different things and so on. And this is direct, I can report directly. Many of the people ask me, well, how do you know what to do? Many of the, I'll call it insights. I won't call them downloads. I don't like that term. It offends me for some reason. But many of the insights that I get while doing the light sound stimulation process. And what I've noticed over time, the hypnagogic, hypnopompic, that's, so-called fourth state, the waking dreams. The transition from being awake to sleep categorically is hypnagogic. And the transition from sleep into waking is the hypnopompic. That's the terms. I'm a hypnopompic guy, and I think all the different things come together for me. Hopefully with some amount of modesty, but it's a claim I can make because it happens for me. Is that in the process, the process of coming out of sleep and into waking, that first half hour or so, stuff just like pops into my head, and what seems to pop in, I'll make it up, 5 seconds, takes me 5 hours at the computer to try to capture in a way that can be communicated. So In this sense, I'm lucky because it's somewhat reliable. And the other is when, like, I don't know, Dallas, where I'm working hard to understand something, and then seemingly out of nowhere or somewhere, a certain research study comes in front of me, and it has information that I've been scratching my head over and trying to understand, and then suddenly it's there. Mm-hmm. Now, we humans are story makers. I'm making up a story right now, trying to connect dots of experience into something that is, I can communicate reliably. So I'm humbled by it. I pray, and I have the committed relationship in a particular tradition that I practice, being fully aware that all my experiences from my earliest days until now all add, very few subtract in a bad way. Mm-hmm. So I'm emboldened to encourage people to do these kinds of things, because there really does appear, beyond reported studies, and so, there really does appear to be a very attractive benefit at a personal level. Because I'm not special. I'm just another guy. So if I would like other people to have this access to the same positive stuff that I have access to. Yeah. So I respect any spiritual or religious tradition that isn't wacko and hurting people. I respect that as an early, I'll say this because I believe I know that you also practice within the Catholic tradition. I appreciate it now more than I did when I was young. Mm-hmm. I appreciate it more now. And, for people, I don't know what people's attitudes are about anything. Some people are stupid. They have bad attitudes. But, for me, I can go to Mass now, the Catholic ritual, and I have a deep and motivated experience. It's a psychoactive agent, if we can go back to that. I'm moved by it because I appreciate it now. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good thing. Yeah.
I completely agree. And I think it's well said what you're saying. There's power in the experience and understanding and coming to new insights, especially the way that you've described them. And I think that's more than enough reason to try something that can bring you insights that make a lasting impact on your life, and save you time. Yeah. Like you said earlier, life is short, and we need those insightful moments and from the source, whatever you want to call it, from God, that pop into our mind and give us the truth that we've been searching for to help us propel ourselves into a new way of understanding and a change for the better. So I completely agree.
I mean, what else are you going to do with your time?
Well, there's a lot of other things you could do that would not be productive, probably. Yes.
Well, there you go. So, okay.
but
right.
I love it. The NeuroVizr is a constructive device. It's a creative device. And the psychedelics, I'm super excited to hear more about that at the Biohackers Summit. So Garnet, it's always a pleasure, Mr. Garnet Dupuis, and I can't.
Mr. Dallas Mcclain.
No, you didn't say it with a French accent. I'm a little
no. Well, we can go there if you want, but no. Okay.
Well, I appreciate the time, brother, and I can't wait to have all of this information out. We're gonna publish this near the end of September, I think, before the event, and have everything ready for you guys and for the Biohackers Summit, and everyone listening and reading has a lot of forward-thinking things to look forward to. So it'll be great.
Okay. All right. Sincere thanks to you and the team. And at some point in time, it would be great to go elbow to elbow, face to face, if that's Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Tell your wife, Garnet says, please.
I'll do my best.
Okay. So you can tell that you'll bring them back a T-shirt, right?
There you go. Yeah. Maybe it might take a little more than that. We'll see.
Well, okay. Well, I don't know where. Never mind.
Garnet,
Yeah,
I'll leave you as the last words, just to give the people resource of where they can go to check out what you're doing, your mission, and the technology behind what you're selling.
Well, we're working on websites as everybody else in the world is, but Visor, VIZR, it's a weird spelling, it's a sound alike. NeuroVizr.com is an active site we have right now. It's morphing, but you'll always be able to find us either there or the link will kick over to where we are.
Perfect.
And for me, I'm in Chiang Mai, Thailand. So if you want to come visit, just tell me when to pick you up at the airport. That's not difficult.
Well said. Okay. Well, cool.
Okay.
Well, Garnet, a real pleasure. And again, I appreciate the time.
Okay. Rock and roll. Bye-bye.
All right.